The next thing to do when you're taking out the rear wheel is first take off the bell crank. So that's a 2.5mm wrench into this little set screw here. Loosen that. That comes off like this. Then we're going to take the push rod out and we're going to put that in the bag of parts with the crank bolts. Now with the bell crank out of the way and we took the push rod out, we're going to take the 15mm wrench and loosen up these two axle nuts there and on this side. And then pull the rear wheel out. Let's set the chain off of that sprocket. Pull the rear wheel out, dropouts, and let the rest down on the table. If you're disassembling your 7i, the rear wheel comes apart slightly differently than the 3i. It doesn't have a bell crank. It has a cassette pulley. And we're going to use one of two tools that you'll have in your toolkit, either a 2mm Allen wrench or a short spoke length, to actually rotate the cassette pulley around, disconnect the shifter cable, and then we can pull the rear wheel out. Make sure that your shifter up there at the grip is in gear number 1, and then we're going to take your short spoke length or the 2mm wrench and we're going to place it into a hole on a tab of the cassette pulley right there. Then we're going to rotate this from the 9 o'clock position down to a 6 o'clock position, which gives you some slack in this cable and allows you to pull that fixing nut out of the cassette pulley. Then we can rotate this back up and take your spoke length out. Now with your shift cable fixing nut out of the cassette pulley, we're going to lift the chain up to get it out of the way, and we're going to reach over here where the cable housing for the shifter goes into the arm of the cassette pulley, and we're going to slide this forward and take that out of the cassette pulley, so now it's free. Alright, now the rear wheel is ready to come out of the dropouts. We're going to take the wrench, loosen up the acorn nuts on the right side, pull this non-turn washer, loosen this one with a wrench, and now we can pull the entire wheel out of the frame. And the last thing we have to do with the rear wheel is take the cassette joint or cassette pulley off of the hub. So we're going to take off the acorn nut, and the cassette pulley will be able to access. We'll take this lock ring, move the yellow dots together like this. That lock ring comes off. The cassette pulley comes off. We can put these both in the bag of parts, like so, and remove the rear wheel for packing later. Now with the wheel off and the chain here, we're going to pack some foam around this fender stay, and then we're going to wrap the chain up and wrap it around there as well to protect the chain stay and the chain itself during shipping. So we're going to take a piece of foam, we're going to wrap it around here like this, and then put one piece of tape here to hold it like that. Now we're going to wrap the chain up and bundle the chain underneath this so that it can't touch this or anything underneath. Now we're going to take the chain, stretch it out, and we're going to fold it in thirds, about like that, so there's not much chain here hanging out of a loop. And we're going to wrap that chain up in a piece of foam, like this, and we're going to throw a piece of tape around that. Alright, now we're going to take that little loop of chain, and we're going to run it up this piece of foam, put it about like that. So now this is away from the frame and nothing can push on it this way. And then one more piece of foam to wrap around the whole business. This. And then one last piece of tape to bundle that whole process. Alright, so now the fender stays protected, the chain stays protected, the chain is protected, and nothing will happen up here, so we're all good. Now from your packing material you'll have a brace for the dropouts in the back, so we have to put that on, and that just sort of gets on there and protects the rear dropouts. Alright. Now we'll take a piece of foam, and you might even have this still from your wrap. Put that around, fold that under, and put a piece of tape on that one. Alright. The sprocket in the rear hub sits in this area during packaging, so this chainstay requires us to double it up, give it extra packaging right here. Alright, and then one more chainstay on this side, and this doesn't require double packaging, but we'll just do it there just to give it a little protection. And one piece of tape on that. And the last piece of tape, we're going to secure the bell crank onto the dropouts, like that. Okay, so the rear end is all packed up. So now we're going to start to disassemble the front end, and the very first thing we want to do is loosen the main bolt that holds the whole front end assembly together. So with your 8mm wrench, going to loosen that. Don't take it all the way out yet. Alright. Next thing we have to do is take out a set screw that sits under here and holds that whole shaft in this tube. So I'm going to take the whole machine, I'm going to tilt it on the side so you can see that. It's a 3mm Allen wrench. I'm going to loosen this up so it comes out a little bit. Doesn't have to take it all the way out. And now that shaft can be pulled out. Alright, now we'll rotate this back onto the regular position and start working on these rod ends. The outboard rod end we're going to take off of the steering knuckle. That takes a 13mm wrench up top and a 13mm wrench on the nylon lock nut underneath. Unscrew this, take that out, put this back on and secure it tight so it doesn't come off, and then just leave this up here, and then we'll do the same thing on the right side. Once we take the steering linkage off of this, this has a tendency to rotate, so with the tires deflated it won't rotate so quickly, but just be careful that it doesn't fall in until we get the rest of it apart. Okay, so the right side, the lock nut is loose. I'll take the steering linkage out on that side, put the lock nut back on again, put it on there and snug it up so it can't come off. Rotate it up here, and now we're ready to take this whole front assembly out. Okay, now with your 8mm wrench we're going to finish taking this beam off, and I'm going to hold this supported a little bit because the bearings and things want to come out of that tube. So we got this off. Alright, this is going to slide off this way, that drops down. One set of bearings comes out of the front. Okay, with the front wheel assembly out of the way, we can then take off the rear bearings and then push this shaft out. Now this shaft is a snug fit in here. Never hit this shaft with a hammer on this end. If it's too tight to push out with your hand, then you have to loosen that set screw underneath. But on this one, I think, yeah, I can push it out like that. It's done. Now what we're going to do is we're going to reassemble this. Put the back plate on, the bearings, the next set of bearings, and then we're going to screw the front plate on. Like that. And put this all now in a separate bag of parts for shipping, because that's all greasy. Now we're going to take a piece of foam and we're going to wrap it around the two steering rods. Pull them in tight this way. I'll put a piece of tape on that. And then fold it down here at the top a little bit. Like that. I'll put one more piece of tape up there. Alright, that protects the steering linkages. Here's how you pack up the lower strider pole and ski assembly. You put a piece of foam around here, tape it a couple places, wrap it over at the top, one more piece around here, and then zip tie that on to protect the end joint too. I'm going to show you how to do it over here. We're going to take one piece, We're going to wrap it around. Piece of tape on there. Another piece of tape up here. And I'm going to fold this over the top so we protect this end. And one last piece of tape around this section. Alright. Take one more piece of foam, and double it up. We're going to wrap it around here, like this. And then we're going to put a zip tie around. I think this is an 11-inch zip tie. Heavy duty. Alright. Those two are packed up, ready to put in the box. Okay, here's how we pack up the front beam assembly. Notice that the front wheels fold in like this, so it can lay flat in the box. Slide a piece of foam up underneath and wrap this foam around like that. And use 3 pieces of tape. One in the middle, and then one on either end. Alright, front beam's ready to be put in the box.